The father wound, how every man is shaped by the father who was there or the one who wasn't. Every man sitting watching this right now has a father story. I do not care who you are, where you came from, how much you have built, or how far you have come. You have a father story, and whether you know it or not, that story is running underneath every decision you make, every relationship you enter, every pattern you repeat, and every version of yourself you are either becoming or failing to become. Tonight I am going to talk about something that most people are afraid to say plainly. The absence of fathers is the single greatest driver of the collapse of masculinity in this generation. Not social media, not the government, not feminism, not any system or institution. The absent father, because everything that is going wrong with men right now traces back to a boy who had no one to show him what a man actually looks like. Let me start with the father who was there, because being physically present and actually being a father are not the same thing, and we need to make that distinction clearly. A father who was there but never taught his son how the world actually works is a father who was present in body and absent in purpose, because the most important thing a father gives a son is not a roof or food or even love in the emotional sense. It is a map of how the world operates, what it demands of a man, what it will take from him if he is not paying attention, and how to position himself to provide, protect, and lead in a world that does not hand anything to anyone for free. Proverbs 4:1 says, "Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching." That word here is not passive. It is not a suggestion. It is a command to a son to receive what his father is transferring to him, because what is being transferred is not just information. It is a way of seeing the world. It is the difference between a man who moves through life with his eyes open and one who keeps getting blindsided by things a father would have warned him about. A father who is doing his job is teaching his son to navigate what I have called the octopus, the systems and forces and traps in this world designed to capture a man, drain his energy, steal his focus, and keep him comfortable enough that he never builds what he was created to build. A father who has done the work himself, who has been through the fire and understands what the world actually demands of a man, sits his son down and says, "Let me show you what is coming. Let me show you the traps. Let me show you how competition actually works. Let me show you that life is not a participation trophy. It is a proving ground, and if you do not know how to move in it, you will spend your whole life being moved by it instead of moving through it." That is fatherhood, and when it is present, it changes everything about what a boy becomes. And when it is absent, it leaves a wound that most men spend. Now let me talk about the father who was not there, because this is the conversation that touches the most men watching this right now, and the least people are willing to have, honestly. A boy who grows up without a father does not just lose a relationship. He loses a template. He loses the living example of what a man is supposed to look like, how a man is supposed to carry himself, how a man is supposed to treat a woman, how a man is supposed to work, lead, provide, and stand under pressure. He loses the voice that should have been speaking identity over him from the time he was old enough to understand language. The voice that says, "You are my son, this is who you are, this is what you are made of, this is what I expect of you, and I'm going to be here to show you how." When that voice is absent, a boy does one of two things. He either spends his whole life acting out the wound, making decisions from a place of unaddressed pain, chasing validation from the world that should have come from a father, running from the discipline that a father would have made non-negotiable, or he finds his way. He finds the harder, longer, more costly road to understanding what a man is supposed to be, and he builds it from scratch, for himself and for the generation that comes after him. And the world exploits the first category. A boy without a father is exactly the kind of man that the systems we talked about in the masculine energy script want to produce. No identity foundation, no map, no model, no voice telling him what he is and what he owes the world as a man. That boy is easy to manipulate, easy to distract, easy to sedate with cheap dopamine and entertainment and the feeling of belonging to something, anything, even if that something is destructive. A society full of fatherless men is a society that is easy to control because those men are running on emotion rather than principle, on reaction rather than strategy, on whatever the culture tells them a man is rather than what God designed a man to be. And that is not an accident. A weak generation of men with no father wound and no masculine identity is a generation that cannot push back on anything. They told you the absent father was a social problem. It is actually a power structure. But here is what I want every man watching this who grew up without a father to hear. The wound is real, and it does not have to be your destination, because there is a father who has been available to you every single day of your life, and whose access is not conditional on the choices your biological father made. Psalm 68:5 says, God is a father to the fatherless. That is not poetry. That is a declaration about God's specific, intentional attention toward the man who came into this world without the earthly covering he deserved. And the way you access that covering is through the principle Jesus laid out plainly. Matthew 7:7 says, Seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened to you. If you want to, and once you are connected to God as the source, the next step is mentorship, because God speaks through men. That is the design. The structure is always God, then man, then woman, then children. If your father was absent from that structure, God does not remove the structure. He fills the position through other men, men who have walked the road you are about to walk, men who have made the mistakes you are about to make and came out the other side with the wisdom that those mistakes produced. Men who follow God, who walk in masculine principle, who are building something real, who have something to actually pour into you. Find those men, pursue those relationships the same way you pursue opportunity. Because a mentor who is genuinely connected to God and genuinely walking in masculine identity is handing you a map that would have taken you decades of costly mistakes to build on your own. Proverbs 27:17, Iron sharpens iron. A man who submits himself to the sharpening process of a mentor who's further down the road than he is does not just save time. He inherits wisdom. And wisdom is the one resource that cannot be purchased with money or manufactured with hustle. It has to be earned through experience, and the fastest way to earn it is to learn from someone who has already paid for it. Now let me talk about something the father was supposed to teach, but that most men in this generation have never been taught. And it is one of the most foundational truths about what it means to be a man. You have to embrace work. Not tolerate it, not endure it, embrace it, because God told you from the beginning what the terms of a man's life in this world were going to be. Genesis 3:17 through 19 says, Because you listened to your wife and ate the fruit I told you not to eat, the ground is cursed because of you. All your life you will struggle to scratch a living from it. It will grow thorns and thistles for you. By the sweat of your brow will you have food to eat until you return to the ground from which you were made. Read that carefully. God did not say life might be hard. He said life is hard. He said the ground is cursed. He said you will struggle. He said you will sweat. And he said this goes until the day you die. That is not a threat. That is the operating manual. A man who has not read that page is going to spend his entire life being surprised by difficulty. He is going to keep looking for the shortcut, the hack, the way to get the result without the cost. And he is going to keep being disappointed when the shortcut does not exist and the cost does not go away because you ignored it. The man who embraces work, who reads what God said and says, I understand, I accept, I am going to move into this rather than run from it, that man stops being surprised by hard seasons. He expects them. He prepares for them, And when they come, he does not break because he was already positioned for them. And here is what that embrace of work produces in a man over time. His mindset shifts because a man who has been grinding, who has been building, who has been showing up to difficulty every single day and refusing to quit, starts to see himself differently. The confidence that comes from knowing you showed up when you did not want to, that you kept building when it was hard, that you did not fold when the pressure came, that confidence is not something you can fake or purchase. It is earned, and it shows. It shows in how a man carries himself, in how he speaks, in how he makes decisions, in how he walks into a room. And other people feel it. Men respect it. And women, real women, women operating in their femininity, respond to it in a way that no amount of charm or performance or surface-level presentation can replicate. Because a woman's design, at the most fundamental biological and spiritual level, is to respond to the man who is capable of covering her. Capable of providing, capable of leading, capable of standing under pressure without crumbling. And when a man is genuinely that, when he has done the work of becoming that from the inside out, something in a woman recognizes it without being told. She does not have to think about it. She feels it, and she naturally moves into the feminine position that was designed to be beside a man like that. But here is the thing that nobody wants to say about where we are right now. When men abdicate that role, when they do not do the work, when they do not build, when they do not lead, when they are not genuinely capable of covering a woman and a family, women do not simply wait for men to figure it out. They survive. A woman who cannot find a man capable of covering her does not sit down and go without. She takes care of herself. She builds her own income. She makes her own decisions. She develops masculine energy because masculine energy is what survival in this world without a covering requires. And then we call those women masculine and wonder what happened to feminine women. What happened is men stopped being masculine men. When a man is not what he is supposed to be, a woman cannot be what she is supposed to be. The dynamic does not work without both parts. You cannot have the feminine response without the masculine leadership that calls it out. This is not a criticism of women who have had to operate that way. They were doing what the situation required. The criticism belongs to the men who created the situation by not stepping into what God created them to be. So for the man watching this, who did not have a father, who did not have anyone hand him the map, who has been trying to figure it out on his own and keeps hitting walls he cannot explain, here is the roadmap. Find God first. Let him be the father that fills the absence. Let his word give you the identity and the direction your biological father was supposed to provide. Then find mentors, men who are walking what you want to walk. Men who are connected to God, grounded in masculine principle, building something real. Submit yourself to the sharpening they offer, and then embrace the work, not because it is easy, not because it will not hurt, but because God already told you it is coming, and the man who moves toward it rather than away from it is the man who builds something real on the other side of it. And when you have found God, found your mentors, done the work and built something real with your life, you will have something that most men in this generation are going to die without: a legacy. And the final piece of that legacy is the most important thing you will ever do with everything you have built. You turn around and you hand it to your son. You become the father that was not there for you. You give your son the map. You sit him down and you teach him how the world works. You teach him about the octopus and its arms. You teach him about work and what it demands, and why embracing it is the only path through it. You teach him about God and covenant and what it means to be a man submitted to something bigger than himself. You show him by how you live what a man of God looks like, so that when he grows up, he does not have to figure it out from scratch the way you did. The cycle that was broken before you break it in a different direction. And the generation that comes out of you does not start where you started. They start where you finished. That is what a father does. That is what a man does. That is what the father wound is ultimately asking every man who carries it to become. The boy who grows up without a father has two choices. He can let the wound define what he becomes, or he can let God use the wound to build what he was always supposed to be. One of those choices produces a man who repeats the cycle, and one of them produces a king who ends it. Walk with God while you work for the crown. When he crowns you king, tell the world of the truth you found. That's king-level mindset. Kings don't beg. Kings don't bow. Kings build.